everyone, and welcome to Wendy K Laidlaw. Wendy has spent the last years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally.
It's Wendy K Laidlaw, and as always, I do hope that this podcast and video finds you well. I am super excited today to have my next fabulous guest, Lesley Sackey, who is coming on today to talk about things which I have touched on in the past, and the importance of when you're on any journey, you know, physical, emotional journey, spiritual journey. Sometimes the last thing you feel like doing is, or even consider, is coming into your body in a powerful way. So Lesley's here. So first of all, welcome, Lesley. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
I'll just give you a quick overview, and Lesley can obviously will share more as we're going through, but she's a leader in the realm of women's boxing. Isn't that amazing? It's not often that you hear that. And a visionary tech founder of a platform called Pillow, a transformative AI integrated platform dedicated to powering survivors to thrive after any form of mistreatment, but more in particular, domestic abuse. As a founder of Fight Forward, a social impact business, she has the mission to support women to reclaim their strength and voice after experiencing any form of abuse, but obviously to do so in a powerful way, in a physical way. So, wow. What can I say? That it's amazing. When I first heard about you and I saw you, I was so pleased and proud of women standing up in this way physically, because it's something that's just not really talked about, is it?
No, not at all. I think, you know, also when you say survivors of domestic abuse and boxing in the same sentence, immediately it conjures up all sorts of kind of myths and stereotypes and judgments. And so, you know, interesting enough, but with women, a lot of women are like, it totally makes sense. I get it. And, you know, so it is a mixed response, but I do feel that when you say those two things in the same sentence, it definitely has a few raised eyebrows for sure. But we're here to be disruptors in the most positive way. So
absolutely. And it kind of gives me goosebumps, because it's kind of, as you say, it's almost like an oxymoron. And the idea, we talked about this the last time we spoke about how, you know, girls are brought up to fit into the cultural norms and certain types of conditioning and being physically. And I had forgotten this, but I'd remembered, and I got shamed for it, but I actually punched my brother went in the face when I was about 11 years old because he was annoying me so much, and he fell down the stairs. And of course, it's one of those things that I'm not so necessarily proud of per se, but I remember feeling that energy of defense, you know, like, and then it was shamed in me. So it's interesting. So where did you first start to feel your physical strength and power?
Oh, good question. So I think I got into boxing pretty late in terms of getting into the sport. It wasn't until my early 20s where I wanted an alternative to go to the gym. I wasn't into sports at school. So in fact, I hated it. And so for me to kind of look for an alternative, I thought the gym sounded boring. So boxing seemed like, you know, a family friend said, oh, there's a local boxing gym. Why don't you go and try that out? And then I think, you know, it started off me thinking how incredibly hard this is and exhausting, and who does this all the time, to really catching the bug and again, feeling strength in my body and what I'm doing, and discipline and focus. And then the rest, you know, as they say, is history. It kind of there began the journey where I feel like boxing was choosing me as opposed to me choosing boxing. But if I'm very honest, I feel like boxing is just a vehicle for what I already knew, which is I am powerful, I am strong, I am brave. But it gave me validation in a way, a physical validation.
And then you've gone to win gold medals as well. Let's not forget.
Yes, of course. So
let's not be modest.
Yeah, boxing doesn't teach you to be modest, that's for sure. So it was a short journey of, you know, around 6 years, and in that time I started to, you know, what went from, you know, a fitness and kind of just keeping fit, very quickly snowballed into a journey where I became a British champion. I won the ABA championships, which is, you know, the only tournament in terms of identifying, who's number one in amateur boxing in the country. And then I got selected to box for England and then Team GB, and made it to the European EU competition and won a gold medal there, and then made it to first ever female Olympic selection, which was really quite a big deal. I didn't quite get to the Olympics, but it was a very historical moment, considering especially me, who wasn't into sports at school, and was seeing how let's just see how it goes, to suddenly being at the first Olympic selection, and at a time when we were just finding out that female boxing would be represented in the 2012 Olympics. So it was quite a historical moment,
Yeah.
and a massive reminder for me that, all is possible, and if I can do it, then so can anybody else. And I think that's where began my next journey of working with women in particular, and using boxing as the vehicle for them to connect with their own power and value and self-worth.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, first of all, congratulations on all your success, and it's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank
And I
you.
think sometimes we can get on a journey, and sometimes we don't stop enough to look back and go, "Oh wow, look how far I've come." So,
Absolutely.
and we can just keep, because our culture just keep moving forward and better and faster and more. But that's a huge accomplishment. And I heard you say that you got the bug of boxing. But what was the drive? Because I think once you can kind of, I heard you say tapping into that sort of sense of, you knew you were powerful kind of on some level, but what was the drive? What was the bug, the drive that kept you going?
I think again it was something that was innately within me, and so I always like to achieve whatever I put my mind to and said this is what I want to do. I do it at a high level. I think that's something from a young age, actually, that I didn't know in myself until I began embarking on this journey, where I couldn't put a label on it. But I know that I'm definitely have an innate energy to deliver things that seem impossible or challenging or hard. I definitely think it is. I think people along the way, community and environment, can either pull that out of you more or suppress it. And so I've experienced both. Um, but
And
boxing for me was the environment that nurtured that.
yeah, fantastic. And can you think back when you see, as a child, you recognize there was a particular catalyst, a sort of memory or an event that.
I think what I did realize was that I didn't like to conform. And so I wasn't a rebellious child, but I liked to have freedom, and whatever that represented. I also realized I was very entrepreneurial from a young age, and making the connection, even from, I think my earliest business was selling friendship bands at school. We call it strings, and we'd sell them for 50p, and they're things that you write off as a kid, or even as you're older, like they're just things that kids do. But actually, I'd be selling newspapers, the free newspapers that they used to give out where we were living in a local area. And me and my friends would charge people for them to deliver them, or we'd walk dogs, or and these are all things that I think really just helped shape my I guess tenacity and ability to kind of keep adapting according to whatever my environment was.
Yeah. And did your parents, were they that way inclined, or were you the kind of were you the one in the family that was like, felt different in that regard?
I think each of us are all, from my mother to my father to my two brothers, we all have like we're all different, and we have these very special, I guess there's a tight sense of leadership qualities that are all very slightly different. And then the work ethic. My mum has like a really strong work ethic. My dad was like super entrepreneurial, and my brother, both of them, again, highly intelligent and creative. And so, they've had a number of successful businesses. And I always think the thought of in our families that we're ahead of our time in terms of not
That.
wanting, yeah, like just visionaries and wanting to do something different. And I feel grateful for that, to be honest.
It sounds like there's just that kind of never say die, and just like how can we turn lemon into lemonade, and kind of like how can we flip this around into, you know, what we've been given? How can we make something out of this?
Absolutely. But I must say it was an unsaid thing. So I grew up in a single parent household. And
Yeah.
so it's not that necessarily that was nurtured in that way or had a name on it. It was just
You've
I
taken it.
learned. Yes, exactly. I learned by seeing
Yeah. So you watched your mother being, you know, hardworking and
resilient, entrepreneurial, and all of those things. And yeah, it definitely paved the
and
way.
there's a freedom that comes from that, isn't there, to some degree? I think there's some people that kind of fear entrepreneurialism, if you like, because it's kind of like everyone's looking for the safety and security, but that's an illusion by itself. There's a great book, his name escapes me, the author, it's called Anti-Fragile, and is it Nassim Callum or something? And he talks about the illusion of comfort and safety and security, but actually, you know, this entrepreneurial spirit, or just thinking outside the box, or being curious and asking why and things is what keeps you alert and awake to what's going on in your life and in your world. And so is your mum and your dad and your brothers, were they supportive of your interest into
Boxing.
boxing? Yeah.
So when I say my mum is not a fan of boxing, and but she's a fan of me. So she's been at all my fights. She's sat ringside. She's champions me, but she's like, I don't like this. It's not my favorite thing to do, and I respect
Be
it.
weird if she did, though, and you're like, her daughter's getting beaten.
Yeah. Or your daughter's like, yes and no though, because it's all the things that she sees that goes into it before I step into the ring. So there's, you know, a level of support and awareness there. So yeah, she's not a big fan of boxing, but she's a fan of you know, giving me freedom to explore and express whatever it is that I want to do. And so that I respect.
Well, it's really special, isn't it? Because as a mother, you know, you've got daughters yourself, haven't you? You know, there's that sort of conflict of watching your daughter being attacked, inverted commas, by somebody else, yet equally such pride that you're able to stand up for yourself and defend yourself, and with all that training and everything beforehand, you know, be able to knock them to the floor. So
Absolutely.
you know, so yeah, so no, I'm always intrigued as to kind of how we get where we've got and what are the driving factors behind it. And it's lovely to hear that you've got the support of your mum, and she's been ringside and stuff for you, and even and she's been able to park to one side her natural probably concern for your physical safety, to be able to support you in that realm. So tell us more about, obviously you said that you've had this great success with boxing yourself and accomplishments, and then you decided that you wanted to help other women to kind of get their physical strength.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to credit, you know, there was one man in my life who was very much a father figure on my boxing journey. Very million dollar baby style without the terrible ending, but he was very much an advocate. He was someone in my corner, you know, at a time when there weren't many girls in the gym. His name was Mr. A. He ran the boxing gym where I started, called All Stars, which is still going today. He's no longer with us, but he was, you know, he celebrated my wins. We like, you know, he comforted me during my losses. And he really advocated for me when sometimes boys didn't want to box me because I was a girl, or, you know, and I think it's important to say that as well. As, you know, I work a lot with women, and you know, I'm not into a conversation of like, you know, it's men versus women. And I think it's about us all being able to hear and learn from each other. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think that's the only way to move forwards, is not in isolation.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think there is a danger that people, especially if they've had, you know, bad experiences, to polarize in different directions, and that is the problem. I think if you go back thousands and thousands of years, as many of the most successful culture lived in partnership models with men and women. There wasn't a domineering model; it was a partnership. So it's lovely that you're saying that, because I think especially if you experience mistreatment or abuse, you can then say, the opposite gender into a category, and not everyone's like that. I have a son, so it's not like you can kind of, I hate all men. That's just so unhealthy.
Yeah,
Not all men are like that. My son is,
absolutely.
a very strong but very gentle man, and
Yeah.
is very respectful of women. So it's lovely to hear that you had someone who really saw something in you and was there to support you in all regions of the journey,
Yeah.
and help you to lift you when you felt.
Absolutely. And when I funny story was that I didn't make the Olympic team, and I was like, okay, well, I've gone, everything I've achieved to now has been a bonus anyway. So, maybe like, should I stop boxing? I'm approaching 30, maybe I should have some children. And I thought, I'm just gonna have one last fight just to see how I feel. And then say, fight was on a Saturday, the Tuesday before, I was feeling off, and I was, I, I said to Mr. A, my coach, I was like, I don't feel good, and he was, and then I went and done a pregnancy test, and I found that I was pregnant. And yeah, I remember coming and approaching him and started crying, and he was like, "You're pregnant, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And the crazy thing is that I actually still considered boxing. So I was like, oh, maybe I just won't take body shots and I think that's how in it you are at the time. And of course I look back now and think that's crazy. But I also think that was the confidence I had in my ability as well. Like, no, like this is an easy fight, like who knows? And um but from there on, I knew that I still wanted to work with women. I'd started to do some coaching and even some corporate speaking events around, this champion's mindset. And I felt at the time, especially, I was like, if I can do this, anybody can, because I didn't grow up. I wasn't groomed from an early age to be an athlete. And so it's definitely over the last 6 years during that time where I now am. And so if I can, you can. And I thought there was real value in sharing that, particularly in women in corporate environments, because
Yeah.
I saw a lot of similarities, you know, and I wanted to kind of share those tools and knowledge. So I saw that there was an opportunity to create a space that didn't compromise on the authenticity of boxing, but in a female focused way. And so my first business, the boxing boutique, was born. And the same coach, Mr. A, said, okay, you're going to start your business. He gave me a boxing bag and a pair of boxing mitts. And he was like, there you go. And I still have them to this day.
Oh,
And it's just a constant reminder of having someone who just supports it, like each stage of your evolution, which is really, vital, I think, for people.
yeah, it's very special, Not often people like that come along for everybody. So it's lovely that you got that person in your life that truly saw you and the potential in you, because not many people get that opportunity to have that reflecting mirror, that believing person that
Yeah,
says, I see more in you than you see in yourself right now. I'll be
yeah,
your believing mirror until you get such place. So it's nice that you're able to pay that forward now again
yeah,
with other women. Yeah. And how
yeah.
was it? How was your champion mindset, received in the corporate world?
I think people were blown away by the similarities and the comparisons, to be honest. And I think there's, the corporate world is such a competitive environment. I actually came from a management and marketing background, and then I decided to choose boxing. So I had insight into terms of a professional environment and how that works and how that operates and how you have to learn to adapt, just like in boxing, pivoting and responding to your opponent in a way that,
Yeah.
keeps you safe and also sets you up to win. There was so much. I really enjoyed working, especially with large groups of women at senior level, because I feel like that's where they need the most support.
Uh-huh.
So it was an amazing experience from there.
Fantastic. And then how did you pivot into supporting women that had been mistreated and things?
How did I pivot? So during that time,
Talking of pivoting.
talking of pivoting, during that time, I ended up making an Olympic sport out of having babies and had 3 girls in the space of 5 years.
Wow.
So that was amazing. And
You had three big wins in that then.
three big wins, all under 5 at one stage that I
Wow.
look back now and
That
think,
would have been another sort of Olympic sport.
literally,
Three
yeah, I think,
under five. Wow. But in
yeah.
fact, Olympic sport of surviving on no sleep.
Yeah, very much so. And then if I'm very honest that, you know, that by the time my last daughter was born, I'd left the relationship I was in, which was, you know, 7 years deep and unhealthy, abusive. And so I was navigating all of that. And then what ensued was another 7 years of just navigating, you know, post-separation abuse, which I've only recently learned this term not
Yeah.
long ago. I didn't know there's a name for it. And the minute I heard it, I was like, this makes so much sense
Yeah.
because you have an idea of, you know, in the relationship. But I think it wasn't until afterwards when it ended that the chaos ensued, but then validated the things that you had red flags, I think, in during the relationship.
Yeah. But
Um,
because it's so coercive in the relationship and you're just navigating the day to day and then you got little ones and things, it's sometimes very hard to put your hands
Slippery.
on, you
It's
know?
very slippery.
Yeah.
You know, and with the beauty of hindsight, support, therapy, distance, all of those things, of course you can then begin to spot that. But when you're in the midst of it, it's pretty hard. And
Yeah.
so I'd gone on this journey, you know, and you know, 7 years kind of out, but navigating kind of chaos. And I felt like I'd just been surviving and I wanted to, you know, feel empowered and strong again and thrive. And I thought, you know, what can I do? And I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a boxing fight. I hadn't boxed for 10 years. I'd had 3 babies, a hip replacement, and
Oh, wow.
a pin in my foot, surgery just literally 6 months before. So, I mean, the odds were stacked against me. The odds were
Yeah, but you
stacked
have
against
that
me.
drive. I can sense that in you already. You're like, I've made my mind up. You said this at the very beginning. Once you
Yeah.
make your mind up, that's it.
Yeah, and that literally was it. I said I'm going to give myself 11 weeks. I'm just and the idea was me to just, you know, train for a fight and have a local show at All Stars, participate in that, and any tickets I sell, donate it to the Women's Trust who had been a part of my journey. And like anything when it comes to boxing, it just snowballs. And what transpired to be just originally set out to be this just one-off fight then turned into me putting on an all-female amateur boxing show
Nice.
called The Fight Back. And the
Mm.
idea was we'd showcase the best female talent. I would box on it. And then, you know, I was hearing conversations around like, what, you know, why don't you set up your own organization, like a community interest company to support women in this space? Maybe use boxing as a tool. And I was like, oh. And so within those 6 months, I trained for a fight, set up a new company, and I put on this event. And literally the day before, I'd said to myself, if I actually pull this off, there's nothing I can't do. May I never forget this moment because
Yeah.
it was multiple plates spinning.
And it's a beautiful kind of symbiotic kind of togetherness, isn't it? It's taking the path that you were on, all these kind of experiences and bringing them together. And what has empowered you, you're able to kind of pay that forward, like with Mr. A, you know,
Yes.
he was hit your little kind of guard, not little perhaps, but a guardian angel of sorts to come along and kind of like, you know, tap you with the wand and go, you have something, don't you dare give up.
Yeah.
And how that's taught you so many lessons, life lessons, you know, and tap into your own ability. And if it, go back just a little bit, if you don't mind me asking, and if it's too sensitive a subject, then please don't feel you have to ask. But I know that the listeners might be, and I know myself on my journey, I thought abuse was when somebody physically hit you. I didn't understand the other realms of abuse. Do you mind me kind of asking? You don't have to go into details if you don't, but I think everyone just assumes there's this, oh, abuse, you have to be hit for it to be abuse, but there's all these other types of abuse as well. Do you mind me kind of?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that was a huge part of you know, my journey was that I didn't see myself in the stereotype that I'd had in my mind of what an abused woman looks like, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I kind of justified it like, you know, there was there was like physical incidences, but I was like, oh, because it's not like, it wasn't like I got beaten for like 10 minutes or, you know,
Yeah.
it's weird how you like normalize it, or, chaos, you know, um the confusion, or, where you're second guessing yourself, and there's always something wrong and you're always the problem. And yeah, it genuinely, it felt like at times I was going mad.
Yeah.
It felt like at times I was going mad. You know, coercive abuse is a real thing. And I
Yeah.
think, just by even having conversations, and there's like slowly there's more awareness around um, the different types of abuse, and we've moved away from physical, in the sense of that it's so nuanced, and there are so many kind of different categories, I guess. And so it was very hard for me to, for a long time, understand what I was experiencing was abuse, which is why I'd stay or try and find a way, or then it was me, or I'm fiery too, or but I'm confident, and how can I also know what I'm doing, and like, a whole narrative. And it wasn't until First of all, it wasn't until things spilled over and my family and people around me were seeing and saying, this is not okay, this is not healthy, this is not normal.
Yeah.
And so that was a big step. And then the second thing was being in group therapy, where I was hearing other women's experiences and was like, oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And
you
it's
know,
powerful, isn't it? So when you hear others, and again, gives me goosebumps. You're like, I went to CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous, because
okay.
on my journey, I realized like I was a codependent, whatever that meant. But sitting in a group setting and hearing other people what they were experiencing, and recognize, or learning that that was classed as abuse, and the discombobulation and the confusion. I know at one point as well, I started to record on my phone every conversation we had, where there'd be things would be twisted. So because I was being told it was me, that I thought, well, I just need to get better. I need to do it more. I need to whatever. But and then I started to listen back and go, no, I sound quite reasonable there. No,
Yeah.
we definitely agreed that then. And then it was able to allow that perspective, that distance, that kind of helped to get the perspective. I'm so glad you had family there, sort of reflecting it back to you too, because there's this that beautiful part that you have, that drive, that determination to make things work, can sometimes, and I know
Work against you.
work
Yeah,
against you in
absolutely.
relationships, can't it?
There was no way I was going anywhere.
Yeah,
In my mind, I'm like, I have 3 children with this
have to make this
person.
work. Yeah,
Like, I'm like, we're together. I'm not going anywhere.
yeah,
And even, at the height of, pretty chaotic incident, which I won't go into details, but I came back. So I left and I came back.
yeah,
And then it wasn't until he started to say, this person can't come, or like your family can't come to the house. And then I was like, it's the trying to isolate.
yeah,
And then I think there starts the journey of where you like a switch happens, and then you start to see, but it takes time. And a massive part of that process was me documenting. So
yeah, yeah,
exactly what you were saying, and reading back, and started to document, and print up messages and like accounts. So then so on reflection, I was like, I'm not going mad. This is actually happening. This is it. And then further down the line, unfortunately, because things did escalate, then I had to involve the police.
yeah,
And then it was helpful for me, but it was still tough because there's kind of mixed feelings about how the police support women in these situations.
yeah.
Um, but after like a really, really long time of kind of navigating, protective orders and all those kinds of things, I have all of those things in place now. But it
Oh
was
my,
a journey.
yeah. Well, I'm so sorry that you went through that, because you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
And I know you're eloquently skimming along the surface, and I'm sure if we have a private conversation, we can share a lot more similarities and things going on there. But I can only imagine, how tough it was at times, especially when you got 3 little ones at a close age as well. Yeah, I had the police involved with me, and they were amazing. But yeah, it was really tough. But it's funny, isn't it? Like you saying, you started to document everything, because I know I started spreadsheets, and I started tables, and like how many times was I crying in a day, and like
Yeah,
how many arguments did we have in a week, and it started to go, what the heck? This isn't normal, because I think
yeah.
that driving part that we have, which is
Takes a lot. Puts up with
it's
a
a
lot.
beautiful quality in the right focus, but when you're in a toxic environment or relationship and you attach that mentality to, "Right, I got to make this work." Actually, it's so toxic. It's learning when to let go, which can be really like, it's like a grieving process, isn't it? Because
Absolutely.
people that we are, it feels like a failure in some way, but no, it's actually a success in for ourselves to be able to recognize it for what it is. And it's nothing to do with us. It's not our fault.
Yeah, I think as well, I think it is hard when kids are involved because ultimately, you know, I don't know any women
Yeah.
who try and find a way. I always say, listen, parenting solo first of all, it's a two-person job plus a village, right? To have a child and raise a child. And so if a woman is genuinely, estranged from the father or like is not able, it must be for good reason because I don't think genuinely anybody volunteers to do this by themselves.
No.
And so I think, women like me in these situations always are trying to find a way for the children to have access to the parent, until it doesn't become okay or safe anymore. So
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, if you think that a mother grows that child in her tummy, these instincts of protection, not with every mom, I may add, there might be a small percentage not like that, but exactly, there is this innate, natural desire to keep the family together because you think that's what's best. But when it
yeah,
becomes so toxic, where the children become so scared or frightened, or and they start to show signs of this thing, then you're really like, this isn't. And many women stay together because of the children.
absolutely.
And I just don't think it's talked enough about. As you say, it's really moved away into this coercion of like, emotional abuse and psychological abuse and financial abuse. Financial abuse is a big one, again, that traps women in relationships where they can't get out. I'm a huge advocate for empowering women in different ways financially, to start, even when they're in a relationship, just to start to build up their nest eggs, if you like, because there's this openness that we've been conditioned to have, to stay in these relationships and share everything.
Yeah,
But yeah, let me tell you, when it comes down to the crux, I think women have this, and I'm generalizing here. I know I'll speak for myself. I thought, I was going to stay in that relationship till the day we die.
yeah,
And I thought that everything that happened in that relationship was 50-50. Let me tell you, it is absolutely not. So to anyone listening, do not, no matter what, fall under the illusion that you would get 50%. That just doesn't work like that,
mm,
and I think, how things can be twisted and turned, that you're just like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. But I think equally, it's, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, and this is why we're talking this today. And I think if this conversation can at least say to a woman, if you're crying all the time, and you're walking on eggshells, and you're like thinking you're going mad because you agreed something and it's changed, then it's important to kind of write all these things down and start to help yourself. And I think with you starting, Fight Forward and Pillow, it's a beautiful oxymoron, if you like, isn't it? It's actually a double whammy of strength, that coming together and getting the validation, like,
yeah,
with your workshop last week, it was powerful to hear how educated and well informed the women are, and
yeah,
also don't become victims of it. Because I think the danger can be that we, obviously, we can beat ourselves up and go, "Where did it all go wrong? It's our fault." And because we're the type of people that we are, we're like, well, we want to learn, we want to get it
mm,
right, we want to move forward and do more, and be okay. But that type of personality, I call these people just toxic people. It's just there's a toxicity of them. They have no desire, they don't care about anything or anyone other than themselves. And actually, if anything, your light and your brightness is what they want to snuff out, because
mm,
it irks in them. So for women to be able to come together in that physical sense, is so, and how did you, so you started with, you know,
So I started with Fight Forward. I started, first of all, just kind of offering events like Box and Brunch where women could get together, move, and then connect and network and just, some like speak about what's going on or not speak about what's going on. And then having gone on that 10-week program where, training to step in the ring, I found that this was a powerful way of women to really reclaim their body, their voice. Um, and so I set out launching the Fight Back, where a group of women would step in and train for 10 weeks and step into the ring for a showcase fight at the end. And of course, like, it's huge, it's like 300 people, you're stepping into the ring. It's scary in itself, but actually it's not even the destination. The most important and magical part of this is the journey. It's the connection with each other. It's the safety to emote. There's a huge, there's lots of data and research to show that, trauma lives in the body, and there's a connection between physical movement and how to release that. And you yourself know, and speaking about it, the way the body holds on to things and how that manifests in other ways. And so boxing is a very powerful, rigorous movement to try and shift some of that energy. And given the right container and safety, it's a really powerful tool for healing. And that's what I wanted to bring. So we're now running our third cohort, which begins actually next Monday. We have a group of women who will be stepping into the ring on the 12th of July. And so so it begins again. And I want to bring more
it's so amazing.
workshops
It's wonderful.
sessions to the women. My vision is to just be able to run these programs constantly, not necessarily where everybody has to step into the ring, but there's an 8-week program where you can do a boxing session a week along with a group therapy session a week. And the idea is to have safety to emote whatever's coming up for you as a result of the physical movement. And so that's where we're at the moment, just fundraising and building and trying to spread. But through that, I'm meeting with a lot of survivors, and I'm hearing consistent problems and unmet needs in this space. And so that kind of took me on the trajectory of setting up this company, which was, what I did identify is there is support crisis at crisis point, but there's very little support post-crisis. And this is what I call the no man's land, the gray area where you're like, what now? I'm safe, but I'm still having to navigate a little bit of this or a lot of that chaos still. I'm learning how to co-parent potentially with my perpetrator. I have to kind of deal with the school or work, plus, like, who am I? And, what do I want in the world? And so I thought, imagine there was a space where you could kind of unify all these problems and get answers to, whilst also connecting with other women who just get it. And so Pillow was born, and it's a tech solution to this problem, which is how can we power survivors to thrive post crisis. So it's all my journey. It is linked and kind of keeps me in service, if you like.
Absolutely love it. And it's funny you say that, because there were strategies and techniques and tools and things that I uncovered and discovered, dealing with the post side, which I journaled the whole thing, and I've started writing a book about it, because what I felt so disempowered about was like, what do I do? How do I handle this? I can barely think, navigating children, navigating schools, navigating all these different things. So I've started a book on it because I felt I couldn't find anything. Like, I couldn't find anything online. I've searched everywhere, and like, I'm an avid reader, and like, I just need something in my hand that I can read at night or refer back to, like a Bible, of like, try this statement or try this technique or try this, because you're literally having, like in a boxing ring, having to pivot all the time. And sometimes when you can't think and you're traumatized, and you're either, and some women that we've worked with suffer from terrible fibromyalgia, which is the most excruciating, debilitating pain, or endometriosis or adenomyosis or cysts or fibroids, whatever. It's a real pain surge to the body. But if they can still read and still navigate, then this is why this book is being born out of that, that desire to share what worked for me. And I had people come to me and say, wow, I can't believe that you navigated that and you got over that and that. How did you do it? And And it's something, it's a part of my journey I've not talked about very much, because it's like, how do I talk about it in a way that, doesn't, raise the dragon, but also kind of like empowers women in a way that they can tune into themselves and be strategic, and because we're talking about, it's the art of war here. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no other statement to make. And I think some women find that like alarming even to state. It's an act of war, which, when there is a post-separation situation and you're having to think like a general, a strategic with the battles, and plan for the future. So I have a book half written already on that. So it's lovely that we're using our own experiences to pay for
Absolutely.
women. But just going back a little bit, what you said about trauma in the body, it's, I think one of your students had said she did her first boxing and she was really scared, and then she had a massive somatic emotional release and she felt her body shake. And we've talked about trauma release exercises, TRE. If people don't know about it, you go look it online. It's a way of kind of bringing it, lying on the floor with your knees apart, and then slowly bring them together, and the body shakes out the trauma. Which is why I was so fascinated about you doing the boxing, because it is a physical expression, and what can tend to happen with people who are traumatized. And again, I'm talking about myself, is you get really frozen in that freeze fold position. So everything becomes tense. So to be getting the body moving, even in the littlest of way, but even in the most inspiring way, which is getting in a boxing ring. So I love that you're doing these things. I just think it's fabulous. And then to be able to do it from a tech perspective, to be able to bring people together with pillow. Is it pillow talk or pillow? I can't quite.
Pillow. I call it pillow talk. So we're just running this pilot group at the moment where we're just a focus group of women, on a very lo-fi kind of prototype on WhatsApp community, just to be in conversation with them, and what are their needs, what is coming up, how would they best like to have access to resources and all those types of things. And then also, again, what are the day-to-day struggles that are not linked with your trauma, but of course now, because you've been through this thing, there's a lens which then impacts the way you're dealing with things at that time, but not necessarily forever. And I think that's again important, because then it's not from this state of I'm a victim and this is what's happened to me. It's like this has impact on how I show up in spaces, and so how can I learn and understand that, so then I can show up in a way that feels good and empowered for myself.
Absolutely. And I think, if you're even thinking of, I'm not that I would say I'm necessarily religious, but if you think from a spiritual realm, like there's things that have happened in our lives, which, we didn't ask for, but now we've arrived at this destination, having gone through that. And, I don't know about you, I wouldn't change my past. But I don't want anyone else to have to go through to reach where they need to go. I don't think women have to suffer in the way that I've done, and clearly you've had to, and I love the term survivor. We have survived, and now it's time to thrive, because once you've been through that, you're very well, versed, and a lot more wisdom as to what to do. And I believe our duty, our calling, is to share. We're not in tribes anymore. We don't have elders that sit around the campfire, in passing this information. We've got a lot of noise on the internet, and a lot of deep societal conditioning about how women should be, and even I think even the concept of marriage is way outdated now. It's just an outdated concept, personally. So it's interesting hearing all of this. So the trauma that sets in the body, it's a wonderful way to express. So if people want, obviously I'll put details in down below, but what would be your kind of like inspiring or imparting words to women who are perhaps feeling, maybe they don't even know that they're in toxic relationships, but they're feeling a lot of, because as we've discussed, the body stores a lot, and the body is the first kind of communicator that things aren't right. Pain in the body is not normal. And the women that are listening to this, they know this by now, because I go on about it quite a lot, that there's normally a lot of emotional stuff that's trapped. But what would be your inspiring kind of words to women who are feeling perhaps disempowered right now physically?
I think it's, everything I relate to boxing. I'm like, boxing is life, but it's literally one jab at a time, which is one step at a time, and then you build from there, and then you can start to throw like multiple shots and combinations. But the idea is that it starts first with one moment, one step at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the best approach. And then given the energy and resources, then you can start to tackle the big things, but one step at a time, and ultimately to know that it's possible to triumph over trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's great that you mentioned documenting it and journaling it and sheets and
Yeah.
stuff, because the type of women that tend to, be the ones that are find themselves in these situation. There's it's like that wrestling of the caterpillar into the butterfly. There's that sort of conflict inside the cocoon of chaos waiting to come out. But of course that journey inside the cocoon is not easy. There's actually I heard the other day that the cells inside the cocoon are called imagine cells. Is that just insane? Biologists
Wow.
call them imagine cells. So if you kind of, expand on that even more to think, well, if you're in a situation of chaos, imagine you're in the cocoon and the universe or nature or whatever is trying to force you to change. And invariably there's the caterpillar cells and the new emerging butterfly cells actually compete. They're in conflict. They actually fight with each other.
Wow.
And there's these imagine cells. So this is where this visualization, imagination. And then once the butterfly has formed inside that cocoon, it has another fight to get through the cocoon wall. And it's through that cocoon wall that the wings get its strength. If you cut the cocoon, the butterfly falls to the ground.
Oh, wow.
They can't
Wow.
fly. So this is why, again, we have to.
Beautiful metaphor for life, right?
It is. And I think sometimes we might go through the cycle several times. But
Yeah.
what struck me the other day is like, what is it that happens that little caterpillar that's walking around munching away one day decides to go up a tree and then munches away along the branch, and then suddenly what makes that caterpillar stop? And it kind of struck me because I journal every morning, and I was like journaling away going, maybe that's where with some of us we have to have something catastrophic, something that really we just can't ignore it anymore, that makes us stop. And it's that stop that puts us into the cocoon. It's that stop that starts that metamorphosis, that starts that transformation. And to kind of trust ourselves, trust that we have everything within us, because the caterpillar doesn't have to go out to anybody else and get what it needs. It has everything within itself but of course it'll be a struggle. Of course it'll be a fight. Of course there'll be doubts, when that caterpillar is going, I don't want to stop being a caterpillar, and I just love that analogy, because I think, we want to keep growing. The irony is it's that stuck between kind of being in a velvet rock, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like oxymoron of we want to grow, but we don't want to grow. And like, what does that mean? We want the comfort and security, but actually, no, we want the adventure. So, yeah, I thought that was quite apt about a good analogy for life. But look, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your story. It's you're a testament of strength to women.
Thank you. You are too. I think there's a lot of us out there, more than we'd care to realize, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, like, us all coming together like this, because there's so many kind of crossovers, and I love it because I used to be so frightened of my body. My body just for 30 odd years used to give me all sorts of issues and problems. It became a vessel of fear that I couldn't run away from. So the fact that you've been able to really feel your strength and pay that forward and share with women, because when I saw your interview, and the lady that was on with you, she was just beaming about the fact that she'd been in the ring in boxing, and then hearing some of your other students as well, like there's just this, you can see there's an ignition, there's a wee light that's been put on of like, I'm boxing, like who would have ever thought that I'm boxing? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Champions.
Yeah, so what would be your parting words?
Just triumph over trauma. Triumph over trauma, and as women, we're amazing. We're amazing.
Yeah. And this is whatever you are in your journey, you've been brought here, that you're exactly where you're meant to be, because
Absolutely.
this is the catalyst to the next level. And is it scary? Yes. But can you do it? Yes. Are you alone? No. And just keep tuning into your instincts, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where can people reach you now if they're listening to you? I know you got this next thing starting on Monday, but it'll be a couple.
So they can, tune into us. They can see us at the website fightforward.org.uk, where we have sessions based in London, East and West. You can sponsor or donate to help support the cause for the women to participate in the programs and other events. And you can find me on Instagram, Fight Forward, at Fight Forward, Fight with a FWD, for that, or Lesley Sackey.
Amazing. Well, I'll put all the details in.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to pause in a second and we can have a chat after this. But thank you so much indeed, Lesley, for coming on. I appreciate your time, and it's wonderful the mission that you're on, and I wish you the continued success for it.
Thanks for listening to Wendy K Laidlaw, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one. The world needs a healthy you.